For 60 years, the cars bearing Enzo Ferrari's name have enjoyed a loyal and passionate following among auto enthusiasts. From the earliest single-purpose racers to the latest grand touring road cars, no other brand has thoroughly embodied the joy of driving, the appreciation for elegant styling, and the respect for brilliant mechanical engineering. But even in that rarefied air, a select few Ferraris stand out above the rest. Most notably, the house of Pininfarina has produced some truly remarkable specials over the years. One such creation, based on the Ferrari 612 Scaglietti, was recently completed by Peter Calico and became known as the Kappa project.
I had remembered that there were two special Ferraris that were built for Sergio Pininfarina's dad. One was based on the 275 GTB, and the other based on the Lusso. And I said, that's where I want to be. Then I meet Ron, and we talk. And then he brings Paolo, Garella, and Jason.
In discussions that followed, it quickly became evident that Peter not only had a clear vision for what he wanted to create, but he had a broad knowledge of historical details to draw inspiration from.
As far back as I can remember, I looked at Ferraris, knew what they were, knew what the engines were, knew, what the chassis were like, knew about the transmissions, rear axle steering, all the great things about Ferraris. But I also knew they looked good. And they didn't look good by accident. They looked good because guys knew what they were doing. It was important to have the engineering, but it needs to be clothed properly.
Using real and computer-generated mock-ups, Peter worked closely with Pininfarina's designers and craftsmen on every detail of the car, from reshaping of body panels to the placement of switches, so that Peter's vision for the car was perfected and translated into the finished product.
I thought the rear end of the car was too plain. It was okay. I didn't like the way the taillights were inset. The taillights were put in a style of the Enzo, which I really liked. My big problem with the car was I thought the space between the front of the door and the rear of the front wheel was just too long, and the fake scallop in there, I don't know what it did. I mean, it was a nice idea, but I just thought that it needed something. So we created actually a real vent. And by creating the real vent, we ended up shortening the visual look of that space. The other issue I didn't like about the car was I thought the hood was too plain. I didn't think it was ugly. I just thought it was too plain. So we put a hood scoop on it. And the hood scoop was a feature on almost all the Ferraris from the late 50s through the 60s. If you look at the Supermericas, they have these chrome surrounds on the hood scoop, and they run from the front of the car to the hood scoop, up, over, back, and back to the front. The regular Ferraris, they don't have the pieces that run from the end of the scoop to the front of the car. And the problem with those pieces are they always catch the rags when you clean the car. So every Ferrari I ever remember seeing like that had like threads coming out of it. So I spoke to Jason, and he came up with this simple idea of polishing the edge. And by polishing the edge, you do two things. You relieve my problem of catching the lint rags, but you also remind everybody that this car is made out of aluminum. By having a piece of raw aluminum with just a clear coat on it, polished and clear coated. I thought that was inspiring. Where I did use my knowledge of the old cars, the thing I really wanted was a real Ferrari grille. We recessed the grille, but we didn't recess it with the aluminum surround. We recessed it like the 275 GTBs, which I thought was a really beautiful detail. We came up with the idea of having a transparent roof. But those transparent roofs were in Ferraris that were done in the late 50s and early 60s. And they would had these fabric shades. They were sunroofs that didn't open, they were glass, and they were shades that slid back and forth.
But Peter wanted a modern interpretation of this classic design element. He incorporated the photovoltaic cell to power a hot air exhaust fan and special glass that could be made opaque at the push of a button.
It was important to them that I be happy with what was going on. I think I have over 300 progress photos. The sun comes in, and as the road moves and as you turn, the sun either emphasizes or de-emphasizes varying parts of the interior, and you really get to see how beautiful it is.
In April of 2006, Peter finally took delivery of the Kappa, choosing the Concorso at the Villa d'Este, Italy, for the car's public debut.
The car collecting is an adjunct to my love affair with the cars. I have to tell you, of all the things I've done, this project was up there as being one of the most fun.
Peter was our ideal client. He knew exactly what he wanted. He knew how to transmit it to us, and most of all, he did his homework. He had a car in his head, and we were able to get it out of his head and transform it into metal and leather and some really exciting pieces.